evening once again. Thank you very much for taking your Tuesday evening to join us for this very intimate session about urban farms. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce all of you to the 5 panelists who have agreed to join us today. First, we have Allan Lim. So Allan Lim is the founder and chairman of Comcrop, which is Singapore's first and only commercial rooftop farming company. We also have Bjorn Loh. So Bjorn Loh is the founder of Edible Garden City. It's a social enterprise that promotes urban farming. So basically, if you've seen like a couple of rooftops, urban farms and rooftops, that's probably his doing. We have Trina is very proud that we actually have 2 female urban farmers today. So the first one, of course, is Loh Jien Mei from Liteleaf. So Jien Mei is the co-founder of Liteleaf, and she would like everyone to know, or at least I've described her as an engineer who has decided to become a farmer. And then the second lady is Grace Lim. She's the founder of Urban Farming Partners Singapore, which was she founded it together with a Dutch consortium in 2019. If you're wondering why it looks like a bar in the background, I just want to let you all know that that is not a bar. That is actually her office, and she's still working tonight. Last but not least, of course, we have Ammarudin Hadi. He's the marketing manager at One Fair Hotel, and he's been doing a lot of sustainability and farming work at his hotel itself. Of course, my co-moderator for tonight is Trina, the chair for World Food Future. Brilliant lady, wonderful lady. And over to you, Trina, to introduce World Food Future, and then maybe we can kickstart this evening.
Sure, thanks, Han. Thanks, Han, and welcome everyone to Table Talk number 3. We have about 100 people registered, and I'm always so grateful that, especially during phase 2, you have taken the time to be here with us. You could be doing a lot of things, right? You could be out with your friends, etc. So those of you who don't know, Table Talk is proudly co-hosted by both Peak and World Food Future. And World Food Future is an annual conference that focuses on food topics, such as food security, food sustainability, and the future of our food. Proceeds from the conference goes towards supporting our school nutrition education program called Food Steps, and that focuses on lower income primary school kids. And if you need more info, please go to our website or follow us on social media. And please post questions tonight. We'll be, hopefully we'll be answering a lot of your questions. And so today, without further ado, as you all know, the topic is urban farm-ily, F-A-R-M, right? But why farm-ily? Because as serious as urban farming is for our food security in Singapore and our 30 by 30 vision, it is also as importantly a community builder, really bringing people together to create social change, such as greater awareness for climate change, for sustainability. So maybe for my first question, I'd like to ask Allan and Bjorn, both your companies really focus on this community spirit. So how do you balance that with an eye on profitability as well? Over to you guys.
Please, Allan, please go ahead, because you're so much more the pioneer.
Both me and Bjorn really started at a place where, wow, how many years was this? 8, 10 years ago?
9.
9, like a lifetime ago. Okay, I'll take a step at this. Comcrop and Edible Garden started almost at the same time, where we took very different trajectory. Our underlying assumption is that we need to solve for the food security issues in Singapore and globally. We see climate change as a huge problem for food security. And also we see specific vulnerabilities in Singapore, right? As island city-state, where we have limited resources and importing of food. But we also thought about the other part of it, which is, can modern urban farm exist as a monolithic standalone, isolated building or a farm. I think the vision of the founders is really to look at whether we can use marginalized space, improve and grow a lot of food, but at the same time, engage the community that it serves. So today we are operating a large-scale rooftop farm in Woodlands, and the products are all available in Red Mart and Fair Price. But we then also kept on to the idea of community by having people that worked in our farm come from the community that we serve, which is the Woodland Estate, and also continuously create jobs for people who are more vulnerable than any of us here. And today we work with Apex Harmony Lodge, and they just before COVID. I mean, today with COVID, it's a little difficult, but they are actually very much involved in a lot of the processes of the growing that we do. So we are really trying to tackle a situation where we have a very commercial farm, very production centric, and yet we think it's useful for the community that we serve. So that's in short what we do.
Yeah, just a little bit about from our end. I guess what Allan shared is that we did start about the same time, but the trajectory that we went on was quite different. I think Allan had the luxury of having a really nice rooftop in the middle of Orchard Road to start with, while we were quite nomadic, quite homeless. So we moved from space to space at the behest of gracious landlords to let us run pop-ups and then getting chased away to another spot. And finally finding home in Queenstown, which was then an old remand prison, and turning that into a farm about 5 years ago. Again, the community aspect has always been very important to us. I think it was a conscious effort that we made when we started the business, that it had to be a social enterprise. And this is again based on a lot of models that we have seen globally. Urban farming always had that social and community element embraced within it. So we really see the intangible values coming out from urban agriculture, whether it's the community aspect, whether it's getting urban farmers to be the leaders in environmental stewardship, and really bringing the community together. And through this, in the last 8 years, I think the impact, the social impact that we've seen from what Allan has done, and also what Edible Garden City has done, is that we were able to impact quite a lot of lives through urban agriculture. And this model should continue to go hand in hand and should not be separated. I think the intangible values is what urban farming is really all about.
Thank you so much, Bjorn. So on that topic, right, and this is a question for Grace, you founded Urban Farming Partners Singapore in 2019. And you left a corporate career, a relatively stable corporate career in HR. Why, or what were the opportunities that you identified in the ecosystem that made you decide to join, and what have been, kind of the key challenges for you walking through the path that Bjorn and kind of Allan have forged?
Okay, can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
So actually, I haven't left my employer. I'm actually still working full-time in this construction firm that I've been working for the past 20 years. And my bosses are very supportive of what I'm doing. So this is something that I'm doing out of passion. And and they have been fully supportive of this venture of mine. So I'm still working in this company. So this Urban Farming Partners, I've been working on this project for close to 2 years. And, when we first got together, we really wanted to be certain that a commercial farm in the urban context of Singapore is viable. Therefore, we have commissioned a feasibility study and market survey, to prove the technical and commercial viability of the urban farm in an industrial building. So this study also aims to lead to an investor-ready business plan, which covers all the important aspects of the envisaged urban farm. So we thought that, a solid business plan is actually key to getting the required investors funding in order to realize the urban farm. But we were actually so wrong, it was extremely challenging getting seed investors. So I have investors who actually ask me, Grace, why would anyone want to buy your vegetables when I can get a big bunch for $1 in the wet market? Of course I can defend that, but the point is most, if not all investors care only about the ROI, not the vision of food security and sustainability. And at this point of my business, it's really very hard for me to show very attractive figures. So in the end, we decided to just, use our own money plus Singapore Food Agency's funding and the Dutch government's loan to try to complete this project. And we aim to commence construction on 1st of October and to have our first harvest in February 2021. So the opportunities that we have identified, or perhaps I can explain in terms of unique selling point, what really differentiates us from other players in the market is that we deliver turnkey agriculture projects from engineering and design to construction, to training a team to operate the farm. And we even go further, which is to establish sales channels. So based on my Dutch partner's experience, right, a lot of farms in the world fail because the operators do not have the necessary training to manage the farms effectively and efficiently. So that's why we decided that training would be part of the deal, if investors or clients are keen to invest in our solutions. And another opportunity or differentiator of UFP Singapore is that we will be one of the early adopters of the new Singapore Organic Standards SS632, which I believe is also the world's first organic standard for produce grown in urban and indoor conditions. Based on our feasibility study, we understand and we know that there is a market for it, especially in the F&B sector. Okay, yeah. Last but not least, the design of our farming solution is easily scalable because our crop box is designed like Lego. So depending on the size of the space that you have, we can easily scale up or scale down. Yeah. Did you ask me about challenges?
Jump in and ask a question on why you think it was important to go to the Netherlands to, as a foreign partner in all this?
So I did not seek for them. I did not seek them out, rather. I'm quite a spiritual person, so I believe in the power of manifestation. Actually, I have been very passionate about growing since like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure whether Bjorn remember me, but about 6 years ago, I approached him. I brought him to my warehouse. I said, Bjorn, let's grow some microgreens. And I think at that time, Edible Garden City was also just starting out, and we were like looking at the space and we were going, okay, this is a huge space. We have no money to pay the rental, and we probably don't have the resources at that time to build a farm of that scale. Yeah, but the passion started like 5, 6 years ago, but I didn't really talk about it until a couple of years back. And it was actually through a mutual contact. There was actually somebody that I know who knows the Netherlands, the agriculture advisor from the Netherlands embassy. So she at that time was looking for a local partner for the Dutch consortium. And she knew that I am passionate about growing. And so she approached me, and that's how it came about. That's how the collaboration came about. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So talking about passion, Tien, what made you decide to go into farming kind of 5 years ago, right? Thereabouts. Yeah.
Hi, yes. So I think 5 years ago, what happened was that I think at that time there was a lot of talk about climate controlled agriculture, and my background is from engineering, and I think at that time there was a lot of talk about climate change and everything that's happening in the world, and with that, it was like, oh, for me, it was just like, okay, engineering is going to solve all the world's problems. It's going to solve food security problems. And that's how I think I left my corporate job, also from a big MNC, and jumped straight into this with my co-founder. And that's really how we started. We started with a plot of land out in Lim Chu Kang. We were fortunate enough to get a plot of land to start. And we had a lot of neighbors that were willing to help us. So we actually started growing a lot of our everyday crops outside under the sun. We went through the whole process of learning hydroponics from people who had experience in them. We went through going through all the different systems. And from there, we've actually branched off into also doing having our pilot indoor farm. And from there, we've actually looking at applying a lot of different engineering and technology into our systems, but always going back to look at whether the economics work for such a farm and for the things that we grow. I think actually in engineering, actually you can fly to the moon, right? So there's engineering out there, there's technology out there that can fix every problem that you want, but it's whether the economics of it work for agriculture, and I suppose in this case, this location and very specifically in Southeast Asia. So that's how actually I think we actually jumped into this. And we've been doing this now, I think 2020, so it's been 5 years. I met Allan a number of years ago. We're all still here. And yeah, so that's literally how we started from my end, I guess.
And Jen, maybe I'll jump in and ask you, how has it been moving from an engineering background to farming, or has that been very complementary?
To be very honest, it's tough. I think it's tough to an extent that it's tough and good at the same time. I think coming from an engineering background, we look at the problems differently from how the industry looks at them. But tough in the sense that it is also it's actually a very tough industry. It's completely different from engineering. The people you deal with are different. The sector of people you deal with different. What's out there for agriculture is also different. We meet a lot of tradespeople as compared to corporate people. And I guess for myself, it's a learning experience. So my background has actually always been from a big corporation. So now starting up, I suppose working in a small corporation, just setting everything up has been quite a learning journey. And in the last couple of years, just meeting everybody from the industry has been very interesting. Definitely the farming community in the last couple of years in Singapore has grown. When we first started out, I think there wasn't as much. I can imagine when I started 5 years ago, we didn't think there was enough support. I can only imagine how Bjorn and Allan must have felt 8, 9 years ago. While now, I think especially because of COVID, you're getting a lot of interest. The government itself has already been interested for a number of years, but now you're actually getting a lot of interest from the private sector, just because of what's happening with COVID and the idea of the supply chains could be all broken one day, because you never think that you'd see it during this lifetime.
Okay. Hey, Hadi, how are you? Last but not least. So Hadi works at One Farrer Hotel, and a little bit of a background. We hold a conference at One Farrer Hotel, and one of the key reasons why we do it there is because they have a huge urban farm. I don't think many people know that, but they're one of the hotels that pioneered an urban farm on their rooftop. So Hadi, tell me, what about One Farrer Hotel and your urban farm? How was it created? And were you modeling it on something? Yeah, tell us about your urban farm.
Actually, the urban farm as a model in hospitality has not really been a new concept, as it were. Honestly, this is not the first property that I've worked in with an urban farm. So it's quite exciting. As you know, Oasia Hotel has like a huge garden growing on its facade, and back where I work in Sofitel as well, there's our kitchen gets its herbs from an urban farm. So the farm at One Farrer itself has been in operation for almost 6 years now. The 11,000 square feet facility is maintained by a full-time horticulturist and a full-time gardener. It's initially an unused space. Then, when they were first building up the hotel, we thought, why not we functionally supplement the need of our hotel's food and beverage outlets, to keep the supply chain short. So basically, it's a win-win-win for our diners, ourselves, and the environment when you keep it short, because we don't depend so much on imported goods. The diners get fresh food, and the environmental impact of shipping, the logistics that goes behind shipping food is also reduced. So yeah, then they made the decision to actually put in 3 feet of soil for the crops to grow on the roof. Today, on top of supplementing restaurants, the farm also provides us with fresh produce for our farm to table program, where diners can learn not only to harvest but to cook. Then over the years, the space has also been used for educational tours on urban agriculture, and for hotel residents to enjoy, as well as for patients at the nearby Farrer Park Hospital to convalesce and have their families learn how to prepare cuisines for their unique dietary requirements. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Hadi. We have a question from the audience. I just wanted to reiterate that you can ask questions in chat, and Mini will be then funneling it to us to then ask any of the 5 panelists. So if there are any questions for specific panelists, also indicate that in your question. This particular question is for all of you. So I think I'll probably start with Allan first. The question is, urban farmers in Singapore focus mostly only on greens. If we want to be truly sustainable, we need to start looking at growing a more diverse range of vegetables and fruits. So what is your long-term goal to help Singapore self-sustain in this area? Allan, perhaps you can start first.
Thanks, Farhan. Interestingly, I spent the last 4 months of COVID chairing various committees in MTI, specifically looking at this. We know our specific vulnerability, and we know where the opportunities are, as in Singapore, right? When MCO happened, when Malaysia announced the movement control order, many of the local farmers, and this is something that people didn't realize, that many of the local farmers emptied our farm to stock the shelf for 1 day to prevent the hoarding mentality to happen. So we rushed back to our farm on an overnight basis. We harvested the plants that should not be harvested because they are either too young and not as mature, incurring quite a bit of loss. But what it eventually did was the local farm actually pushed forward to tahan, for lack of a better word, shelves until the MCO, and it was great because MCO turns out to be okay. Cameron Highland had some disruption, but over the next 2 days, we had some resumption of supply. But today, some of the varieties are still disrupted. Why I said I wanted to relate this story is simply because when we start to look at what we actually need as food security, we know that it is not about the kales and the strawberries and all the fancy things that our indoor farms are trying to grow. We're really looking at what are the fundamental basics that we can do as a matter of capacity. So to the question, what kind of thing do we need to grow? It is really about the situation that we are in today. So naturally, with Comcrop, we are really looking at the lowest denominator that we can be profitable about. But I think we also have to start looking at food from a different angle. It's not about the variety, but about the whole pillars such as nutrition, and about the nutrition that we can put in. So give you an example, if we are to develop super chai teams in Singapore, whereby the nutrition density is 30% more than, say, the imported ones. And that's a combination of cultivation and cultivar, right? The seeds versus and also the cultivation method. it essentially means that Singaporean doesn't really need to eat that much, right, to get the same amount of nutrition. And therefore, for the same amount of square meter that we use to grow in Singapore, we actually could become more and more sustainable. So that's something that I think would be the conversation that every agriculture farmer and everybody in the value chain will be looking at moving forward. So it's not about how much variety we could grow. It's about a specific quantity, variety range, and then how do we improve this range in terms of energy efficiency, knowing that the indoor farms are going to be energy intensive, nutrient density, and also last but not least, taste. We don't realize that taste is very, very important for Singaporeans. But I think that's perhaps the way to go to start to at least solve our immediate issues with food security.
Very well put, Allan. Thank you so much. Do you have any thoughts on this, Bjorn?
Yes, definitely. I guess the easiest, the most effective crops to grow in Singapore, of course, then with the shortened supply chain, will be green leafy vegetables. You see a lot of kale being grown in indoor farms because it is the highest value green leafy vegetables that we can grow. So that's been optimized quite a bit. There is also kind of challenge to grow fruiting vegetables in Singapore due to the limited land space and the need to turn around crops really quickly for small urban spaces. Some of the things like eggplants and tomatoes and chilies, they take like 2 to 3 times longer than green leafy vegetables. So as a crop, we don't have that much space. We need to push things out quite quickly as well and cycle them along. However, that saying, on the flip side from what Allan has shared, is that a lot of the vegetables that we are eating as Singaporeans is eaten out of habit. Things like chai sim, gai lan, bak choy. These are in the brassica family, and they're predominantly more a temperate type vegetables. That's why a lot of it is being grown in Cameron Highlands because they do enjoy a cooler climate. If you look back at the local endemic species of vegetables and herbs that our forefathers used to eat, whether it's during World War II or things like that, you have diversity of the land like Sayur Manis, Moringa, Ulum Raja, and all these different herbs that you walk along the streets, and they are there. And these plants and these herbs, the nutrient density is a lot higher and a lot more suited to the local climate to grow. So, for example, the Moringa tree grows into a tree, within 4 years, and imagine the amount of foliage a tree can produce as compared to then a chai sim that you have to sow seed, harvest, pack, goes to the market, you sow the seed again. So it's maybe the need for us to then shift our consumption habits to things that grow a lot easier in our tropical climate, because it is quite a challenging climate to grow food in. Because of the high humidity, there's a lot of fungal issues and fungal diseases, and also then pest problems. So maybe on the flip side, if we look more local, more endemic, then perhaps we can solve some of the nutritional problems and the supply chain as well.
Actually, the points that you brought up, Bjorn, were very good, and I think perhaps engineering can solve them, right, Jin? So actually, I just wanted to quickly ask you, having been in urban farming 5 years, have you had to face any of these problems in the crops and the kind of crops that you're growing? Perhaps you can also share the kind of crops that you're growing and how perhaps your own views on this sustainability portion.
So yes, exactly what Bjorn has said. So when like I said, when we jumped into this, we looked at it from a very engineering point of view. Like engineering will solve all its problems, and then as we go along, we realize, it's an organic matter that we are dealing with. It's not a microchip or what I'm used to doing, microchips and semiconductors and things like that. So it's an organic matter, so it doesn't always do what you want it to do. There's, like he says, fungal problems, and then in our climate, it's the humidity problems, the airflow problems and things. So I guess to start answering into what we do, what we are looking to do and have actually gone towards it is that first we adopt hydroponics. Hydroponics is that it's to address the water issue in Singapore in terms of water in Singapore is very precious. And then what we are adopting, which is very mature technology, is what we call the NFT, the nutrient film technique, which is after going through a number of iterations on a lot of different systems, that's the system that we've come down to. But I think then where we now throw in the engineering portion is we're now looking at automating the cultivation system. And what we've done is that we're thinking it's also a mature technology called the moving gully system, which we will be actually implementing in our 2-hectare piece of land, where this is actually then supposed to try and address the issue of land scarcity or the cost of land in Singapore, as well as labor. That's actually labor cost is actually quite a huge problem in Singapore as well. So in terms of the moving gully system, what's happened is that if you imagine a farm whereby it's just stationary fixed NFT systems, you have to do stationary systems and then you have to build walkways in your design. So these are all, it's actually usable space, but you have to provide these space for people to work. So using the moving gully system is where we actually no longer need to have these walkways, because the gullies or the tubes that we implement actually are automated, or they move in the farm, which means that we take away the need of, say, all the walkways or nearly all the walkways in the farm, and this gives us maybe an increase of productivity or increase of usage of space by about 30%. And on top of that is then after that, because it's the moving gully system, we then what happens is that crops, as they grow in different stages of growth, they grow from something like in week 1 they're very young, very small, that they only require maybe about 5 centimeters of radius space, and then as they go on to, like, say, week 4 of their growth, they need maybe 15-20 centimeters of growth space. And in our system, what we do is, because it's all automated, we are able to actually vary the gaps that's in between the plants as they grow according to the different growth stages. And with that, we think we actually increased some more the productivity of the usage of the land by maybe about another 20-30%. So that's sort of the thing that we've done. We've invested in a company that has this technology called the moving gully system. It's an Australian-based company, and with that, that's the technology that we are actually we've been actually implementing in some places overseas, and we are definitely looking to do that here in Singapore. And so, to answer another question is that, so what we usually grow is leafy greens because it's the highest turnaround. So we grow up our toys and our chai seeds, and of course our bayams and things like that. So that's what we focus on currently, based using our moving gully system.
Cool.
I think
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And very quickly to Grace, is your choice of crops as well very much informed by Singapore's unfortunately high humidity, or are you trying to do something a bit different?
So we are going to be building an indoor urban farm. So which means to say that we're going to have climate control system. We're going to have, of course, LED lighting, and the climate control system is what makes this farm sort of like state of the art, because we are able to control the humidity, the temperature, and then of course we have, we have rainwater harvesting system. It's a sustainable and alternative solution, to traditional agriculture. So we will not face that problem. Okay, we will not face that problem of climate issue. So, but we are limited by our farming technology. So the farming technology that we have chosen to use only allows us to grow greens, local greens, leafy greens, which is also what we want to focus on. Okay, before I continue, I just want to say that I just want to quote National Geographic's. Yeah, I'm not sure you guys know, but the Netherlands is actually the second largest exporter of vegetables to the rest of the world. United States is number 1, but United States is 200 times the size of Netherlands. So the Netherlands is a small nation feeding the world. So there is no doubt that they are one of the best, if not the best, in horticulture technology. So I've got no doubt that the Dutch can grow anything, right? I mean, especially with climate control system, they can grow anything. But that is really not our focus right now. I mean, we're a startup, and I totally agree with Allan. When you talk about our food security, we shouldn't really be talking about growing strawberries, because strawberries is a luxury, right? So we really want to focus on the commonly consumed vegetables. In fact, I think if you apply for the 30/30 Express grant with Singapore Food Agency, they will also have some specifications. They want you to be growing vegetables that are commonly consumed and not all your exotic stuff, right? So we choose to focus on that, and we choose to focus on growing greens. And our emphasis really is on freshness as well as nutrition level, nutrition, yeah. So very similar to what Allan has just shared with everybody.
Okay, thanks, Grace. Another audience question, maybe Hadi, you can answer this one. So the question is, how do people with no training start their own urban farm journey on their terrace or other available spaces at home? Hadi, maybe you can share what is grown in the urban garden at One Farah and your experience with growing plants there.
Okay. Okay. In contrast with the rest of the literally every other panelist here, our farm operates very old school on soil that is exposed to the environment. Because I mean, the scale at which we do a farm is very different from the rest of you, where you are providing beyond for your own establishment and maybe supplying to like fair price and things like that. So we have about 60 types ready to harvest. They include like star fruit, papaya, mint, blue pea flowers, black pepper, basil, but the list goes on. Generally, we use these crops in like, for example, we have a dish with buah keluak chicken, which is basically chicken that's coated in a nice buah keluak sauce, and the rice is colored with the blue pea flower, for example, and then our mint is used in our desserts and as well as beverages in our bar. So it's pretty sustainable, I guess. Yeah.
So does anyone on the panel have some tips for people at home who want to start an urban farm, their own farm at home? Like quick tips, maybe, a couple of what you should do first.
I can share.
Good.
I started out with black fingers. I think my journey started about 12 years ago. I killed almost everything. So, but with continued interest and with persistence, it's a journey, right? Gardening is a journey. Is your interaction with nature, and the dealing with pests, how to sow seeds, the type of soil to use, the kind of microclimate and environment that you have. I think we all face quite a bit of challenge, especially living in Singapore in apartments that whether you have no light or you have too much sun, trying to find the right space is always important. There are starting to come out a lot more information online about gardening in Singapore. And in the urban area, there's a lot of Facebook groups that you can join, such as Urban Farmers Group. There's a lot of other workshops that other social enterprises and urban farming companies run as well. So you can learn some of these basics, how not to kill a plant, right, to start off with. And then your journey continues there. Then you can go and volunteer for Allan at Comcrop, or you can come volunteer at our farm to then, understand a little bit about the farming process as well. And even today, MParks have been giving out seeds. I'm sure everyone knows that. If you're Singaporean, you can actually apply for the seeds. And they are running also associated workshops to teach you how to sow seeds, how to propagate plants. So it's coming of age that there's a lot more information on how to grow food online. But if all else fails and you still can't get anywhere, just be persistent and don't give up. And you will get there somehow, maybe in 5 to 6 years' time.
Actually, quick question, Bjorn. Does your company have a quick startup kit for people who would like to start their own home
Yeah,
experiments?
so we have microgreen kits, some seed starting kits, and there are other kits available online as well from other social enterprises and companies in Singapore. So again, you know, there is a lot more resource today to be able to do so. Exploit that, and if all fails, community gardens are a good place to find out how to do so. There's 1,200 community gardens in Singapore, a lot in HDB estates. If you are keen, go down, speak to a friendly uncle, and normally I've learned so much from these gardeners because of their wealth of experience, and I picked up a lot of tips and tricks from them as well.
I have something to say. So Bjorn was saying, if all else fail, then keep trying for 5 to 6 years. So I want to offer an alternative solution. You know, if all else fail, and if you have deep pockets, you can actually invest in one of those hydroponics tower that's available in the market. So I don't have green fingers, but I'm growing a lot of vegetables at home using one of those hydroponics towers, you know. So people who I'm not a salesperson for them, not at all, but it's just that I've benefited so much from the system. Whoever is interested can just drop me like a private message and I can, you know, tell them where to get this hydroponic system.
Thank you. On a more macro level, a question came in from one of the participants today, and he or she asked, do any of you partner with organizations? I take to mean that it actually means restaurants. So do you actually partner with restaurants to recycle the food waste, their food waste on your farms? So perhaps Allan, do you want to tackle that? Do you actually work with restaurants to recycle their food waste?
We don't, and I think that there's I think a mind shift that we all need to accept today, that where modern agriculture is going, we are getting to become less looking like a farm and more looking like a bakery or a factory. Everything has to be run very much precisely, and if I invite Bjorn to my farm, he'll be like totally quite sad because we're just basically moving pipes around and all, right? I know him for a long time, so we are old friends. But so that said, right, a lot of the things that we're doing has to be very well controlled. We did try to put in a composter, a mechanical one, enzyme breaking down particles, and we try to connect that into the system. But what we are realizing is that because the inputs are varied, the outputs are also varied. So there's actually a lot of challenges to fit the output of a digester with even if we can purify it into the hydroponic farm. However, that being said, I think in Tampines Hub, the architects designed a digester that could produce and isolate nitrates that means the output is only water and nitrate, and they could use that very well on their rooftop and their landscape farm or landscape gardens. I think technology hasn't reached there yet, but I think it is a great thing to do because it really is the emphasis on circular economy, and which is something that we all to try to do in the future.
Actually, I can chime.
Sorry.
Oh, go, Hadi.
Oops. Okay, so basically, another thing we do at One Farrer is we have actually our own eco digester where we recycle food waste. So actually, related to the question, it's not like we have it from an outside restaurant. We do it for our own restaurant to recycle food waste such as eggshells, used coffee grounds, and spoiled uncooked vegetables to reuse as compost and recycled water that we use back in our farm as well. So that's a circular economy within our own hotel. Yeah.
So maybe a quick question to Bjorn. I know, farm to table is such a big thing, like Hadi is saying right now. And I know you have such a strong relationship with Open Farm community. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship that you have? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I wanted to remind Allan that he ran a coffee composting project in the past. With Starbucks, but so maybe he has forgotten that he he had actually a composting thing happening in the past. Yeah, so I think we do work with a lot of restaurants. Today we supply to about 60 or 70 restaurants on a weekly basis, and we have in the past looked at community composting projects, collecting waste from the restaurants and then trying to compost that. It is very challenging because just base it down to waste separation and all of these is a very complex process to put into a very busy kitchen and times when the driver and the head chef is not really on board, things fall through. What we've done on the flip side is when we plan the farm at Jalan Penjara was to ensure that we had a closed loop farming system in place, and one of the ways is to bring in an insect farm where we could compost and turn pre-consumer food waste into organic fertilizer that can be fed back into our farming system. Unfortunately, it's really hard to marry this with hydroponic growing. But 50 to 60% of our farm is soil-based and outdoors. And so we directly apply the insect frass, which is then the insect poop mixed with a few other things like enzymes back onto the soil. And that actually, rejuvenates the soil for next planting. And per month, we are addressing about 7 tons of food waste monthly. And there's capacity to increase and conversion to organic fertilizer. So that is our smaller attempt at trying to close the loop, but it's still a work in progress and it's still an experiment at this very stage. Hopefully we'll get to some sort of skill in the future.
Thank you very much, Bjorn. We have another question from the audience, and this is more of a future kind of focusing question, and perhaps I'll direct this question to both Chien and Grace. Perhaps we get Chien first to go. The question is, what is the additional support that is needed in terms of space and resources to grow the industry? And do you have any ideas on, are there ways to make it more monetarily feasible or even more widespread throughout Singapore?
As in local farming, as in farming in Singapore in general.
Farming in Singapore, yeah.
I guess it starts very much that, for more people or more to make it, I think, sustainable for a local farmer to be a farmer, it has to have a lot of support from the local communities, the local people to buy locally grown produce. That's number one. And then I guess when it comes to resources, it's of course good to always have more money. But I think it also boils down to that in Singapore, we have we're land scarce and space scarce. And I guess the resources that's required is just more assistance in terms of getting through all the red tape and getting through all the processes to make a space viable to turn it into farming. I think that's one of the aspects is in terms of getting more support in that area into turning space into usable farming space. I think Allan can agree with that. I guess the second aspect is in terms of just funding and also funding whereby it's not, I think Grace will then say everybody's looking at the ROI. I guess funding, but investors that understand that it's not just something very short term. It's something that you're in it for a number of years, because you would take that agriculture is almost like an infrastructure asset. The amount of money that you put in to build a power plant, or the amount of money that you put in to build roads, it's considered an infrastructure asset. So they have to look at returns in terms of not something short term, but something long term. And I guess the last one is like I go back to talking about the community and having the local people support locally grown produce, and just understanding that potentially the locally grown produce are probably not the most cheapest, but definitely it's definitely got its freshness, and of course its nutritional value, and just to support the ever-growing farming community in Singapore. Those are kind of like the three things I think we require.
Cool. And how about you, Grace? Do you have any thoughts about this, about how to perhaps make farming, a bit more more widespread and sustainable in Singapore?
I think government support is the most important. Government support. I just want to share my personal experience. So because we're doing indoor urban farming, so we are basically converting industrial spaces into urban farms. And just the conversion of the spaces, I have to go through like 4 to 5 government agencies to get approvals. And I think that is that is quite a stumbling block for us. And every approval takes like 2 months, so that sort of stretches out the time we can get the project up and started. So I really hope that we can have like a one-stop station that we can go to, and then we get all the agencies to communicate among themselves. But we just go to one agency, look, we want to convert this space. So JTC can talk to URA, and they can talk to NEA, and they can talk to BCA, and not make us do this process over and over again. So I think government support. And so basically because my focus is on indoor farming vertical, so I personally don't see a challenge in terms of space availability in Singapore, because we do have a lot of large warehouses. And actually a lot of these large warehouses are empty, and we can easily convert them into indoor farm. But I would say one of the biggest challenge for indoor farming is actually the carbon footprint generated by energy use, right? Because right now, renewable energy is still not in its advanced stage. So indoor farm is not climate competitive. But I do envision that in the future, there will be technological advancements in terms of renewable energy sources. And perhaps during that time, the whole idea of indoor farm will become more viable. Yeah.
So Grace, actually on a related note, someone else also asked this question about indoor urban farms. The person asked, for the energy costs associated with an indoor urban farm, is it high? And is that sustainable, like in terms of like the output and input? What are your thoughts on that? Like high energy costs, for example.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, right? Okay, maybe I can speak a little bit just on food's carbon footprint. So food's carbon footprint, or we call it footprint, right, is the greenhouse gas emissions produced by growing, farming, processing, transporting, storing, cooking, and even disposing of the food that we eat, right? But for purposes of this discussion, we can just focus on the carbon footprint for growing and the transporting of the food. For transporting of food, it is quite straightforward, right? Because it's grown locally, so the food doesn't have to travel thousands of kilometers, so it's definitely eliminating carbon footprint from air travel. As for the carbon footprint of growing, honestly, indoor farming generates quite a bit of carbon footprint because of energy use, right? Because indoor farms we are not climate competitive because of the energy use. But my farm will have solar panels installed, and the amount of energy generated by solar it is so insignificant, right, that it does very little to reduce carbon footprint. So the carbon footprint of my vegetables will depend almost entirely on the carbon footprint of my electricity. And indoor vertical urban farms definitely has a huge climate cost, but like I said earlier, we envision, technological advancement in renewable energy sources. So at this point, I would say the first farm that I'm building, I wouldn't say it has got a very good business case, So the idea here is really about economies of scale. So the larger the farm, the more economically viable it will be. So we are really looking at economies of scale. So we want to build really large. Our vision is to build really large size indoor farm so that it can be a profitable business, so that we can be sustainable in the business sense.
I think we're running short of time, so I'll quickly jump in with this last question from the audience. And it's actually very relevant given we do exist in COVID times. So many people are losing their jobs. Is urban farming a way for them to earn a sustainable income? Any of you can take that question.
Maybe Allan can start first.
I've been sitting on quite a bit about this discussion with government on where are we going urban farming. What you are seeing in the four of us today, and also with Hadi, is only a facade of what the agriculture industry looks like in the future. We cannot go there without going together. And to go together, it means that we don't not only need growers, we need technicians, we need logistics, we need engineers in every step of the way. The reason why Grace is experiencing these expensive systems and Jen is contemplating buying from Australia, none of this are manufactured in Singapore. And I put up a very strong case, and I challenge everyone here that don't look at this as a standalone growing silo, but look at this as the very beginning of what an industry will look like in 10 to 20 years time. And I challenge Grace. I don't think the Dutch feeds the world. They only grow very good tomatoes, and they sell tomatoes and they charge you $7 a packet. What if we can sell the Dutch chilies at $7 or €7 a packet? There is an immense opportunity to aspire to be the regional leader in agriculture of all shape and size, in the marginalized space, in rooftops, but in everything that we are trying to do here, let's try to be excellent in that endeavor. And to remember, the people that are speaking to everyone here today are not competing with each other. We are part of a solution that we need to push forward with. And for everyone who wants to join the industry, it is really about taking a good look at where are the gaps. If you're an entrepreneur, please don't just focus on growing. We're already trying to trying to do that. Please try to support us in other ways. If you're a technician or you're an engineering company boss, you think that you could help in trying to help us translate some of this technology into Singapore, please do that. And if you are a student, who has not studied anything about agriculture, it's not that hard to pick up something. And the Poly is already organizing courses to help translate that. Even I myself, I just signed up for a Poly course just to test, because I designed that, so I better go and test as a student. But it's online, 200 hours, and then you get some certificate, and then you can go work for Grace. But I think these are ways that everyone should be pivoting. But we have to go together on this. It's not an endeavor that either one of us can do alone.
Thank you very much, Allan. Bjorn, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think our approach is again quite different. Today we employ 32 urban farmers, from fresh graduate all the way to ex-CEOs that have left their corporate jobs. The nature of what we do again is always continuing to innovate the urban agriculture business model, and together, as a community, we try and push the boundary on how do we redefine urban agriculture and the space it plays. Again, then coming back to the intangible values that it bring up, and so ours is just not focused on produce, and so we're able to offer a more diverse job scope. So we have marketing professionals, we have PR professionals, we have educators, we have growers, biodynamic growers, and just fresh graduates, life science fresh graduates, all coming to then make a difference in the food system. Again, then in the future, what we need to continue to do is continue to innovate the space, so that we can then really change the way urban agriculture is done, both locally in the region and globally, and be that leader of creating this unique model of urban agriculture. Because if it can work in Singapore, it can pretty much work in many other cities as well.
I think that's a very nice way to end off this evening. Before we end off, got a few people actually asking, I think this is for Bjorn, I think. Bjorn, where do you get the seed kits that you were mentioning earlier on? I think they want to get it.
Yeah, you can actually go online to ediblegardencity.com, and there's an online shop that you can actually purchase the seed kit. There's also, if you like to support the community supported agriculture program, which you can subscribe to, you get a box of vegetables that is grown by our farmers and also other local farmers as well. Sometimes when Allan has extra stuff, we will put that in the box as well. So this is a way of, some way of supporting local agriculture. But so these are a few things that you could do. Everything's on our website, so please support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn. And thank you very much, the 5 panelists and the audience for joining us this evening. I just want to thank Grace, Jen, Hadi, Bjorn, and Allan once again for joining us. Thank you for the rest of you for staying on and listening to this 5 beautiful, very wonderful people talking about urban farms in Singapore. If you have any more questions, please feel free to just drop me or Trina, myself, an email. We'll be covering, the Peak will be covering this urban farm story on the website. So any of your questions, I will be redirecting them to the 5 of them over email, and you can read more on the website. Once again, thank you very much, all of you. I hope you enjoyed today's session, this evening session, and please enjoy what's left of Tuesday and enjoy the rest of the short work week. Thank you very much, everyone.